Hey guys, this is Colin from Blackjack Apprenticeship, and I'm back after a bit of a hiatus with a somewhat of a mailbag podcast episode here. I haven't put one out in a little bit, and I sort of feel bad, but I think I just burned myself out during the quarantine. I was putting out podcast videos, chat rooms for the members, and as much as we could to just help people through that quarantine. Now we have been out of quarantine for a month, and I've been doing boot camps and all that kind of stuff and have slacked on the new content. But, that's life. So I guess all that to say, sorry, not sorry, but here's a new podcast episode for you guys. And I've just been kind of collecting a handful of things that I've wanted to maybe elaborate on, and I thought that this might create a good opportunity for it. So it's going to be a hodgepodge of questions or emails I've gotten, or just things I feel like talking about, all related, of course, to advantage play and blackjack. So let's jump right into the first topic, which is about obvious counting. So I got an email recently, and part of the email, he says, this guy got together with some friends to deal some blackjack. He's been practicing by himself. This was the first time practicing with friends. He said that his friends all said it was really obvious to tell that he was counting. He would have, a hard 19. It would take him 10 or 25 seconds to make sure that he had his running count updated before he would choose to stand, which, should be a no-brainer, obvious decision. He might have twos and still be updating the running count and then start trying to think through basic strategy, but he's updating the running count and trying to think through what to do. And his friends are like, dude, this is obvious. The casinos are going to know exactly what you're doing. So, I was thinking through this, and there were a few things that came to mind as far as advice if this is your situation. First off, we've all been there. I remember times just staring at a 20 against, a dealer's 7 or 8. And it's not that I'm wondering if there's some elaborate deviation. I just need a minute to think through what the heck is going on in my brain. So my first advice is that getting faster at everything is going to help. Start with basic strategy. The more brainless, second nature every basic strategy decision is, the easier it's going to be to count while playing basic strategy. I've actually been teaching my son basic strategy just because he's curious, and I'm calling it our summer math program. And, I could tell the amount of time it takes for him to think through a basic strategy decision. There's no way he's going to be able to add counting to it, even though he can count through a deck of cards also. So get basic strategy fast and mindless. But beyond just basic strategy, get your counting faster. I really think the goal should be to count through a deck in 25 seconds. And that doesn't mean flipping over one card at a time. It could be just, thumbing through the deck, moving the cards one at a time with your thumb. I don't care how you do it. But regardless, I know a lot of people say 30 seconds is the goal, and that's great. If you get to 30 seconds, that's great. But I guarantee you, if you get to 25 seconds, you will thank me for it. And if you can make basic strategy mindless, and you can count through a deck in 25 seconds, all you need is a bit of practice to get really fast at those two things at the same time. Counting was such a long time ago that I learned it, but there have been some other skills that I've worked on, and it's the same thing where I'm kind of starting the same place anybody that's learning counting is, where it's painful, it's slow, my brain hurts, and sometimes it can feel like I'm not getting any faster. There might be 2 or 3 days where I practice for an hour and I don't get any faster, but I do inevitably get faster as I continue working on it day after day after day. So that's my first advice, is get faster at everything. My second advice is, the reality is sometimes you just got to stall. You just have to be okay stalling the table and looking like an idiot. Sometimes it's when you're playing and you're having to update the running count, think through the true count, think through if there's a deviation, and if the deviation is there yet, all that stuff. You have to do it at once. And it might take more than a couple seconds to do it, and you just got to be okay with it. And I've talked before about with the church team, we had players that they really had a hard time with this. Certain players didn't feel okay stalling the table. They felt like the dealer, the other players were all pressuring them. And so they would just make a decision, even without thinking through things. So with those players, we forced them just to prove to themselves and to prove to us that they could do it. We'd make them stall the table for a minute, which is really ridiculous. And I think we could have gotten the same point across, making them stall it for 30 seconds. But when it's your playing decision and the dealer is saying like, sir, you have a 17, and we're saying, we gave the signal to stall the table, you realize you really can just sit there and say, hold on, I need to think about it for as long as you want. That the dealer isn't allowed to move on until you've given a hand signal. And what that does is it proves to you that you really are in control of the situation. And there are times where you just have to control the speed of the game to make the proper playing decisions. It's more important to make correct decisions than to play fast or to look smooth and natural, though the goal is to look smooth and natural, play fast, and make correct decisions. Another time you sometimes have to stall the table is if you're spotting. So if you're spotting for the big player, you get, we'll say it gets to a true 2, and you don't want to waste valuable cards in the time it's going to take for the big player to get to your table, that's when you learn that you just got to slow the game down. Maybe you got to ask, hey, what is insurance and exactly how does it work? And then they explain it. Oh, well, if the dealer has an ace up, say, well, what if I want to buy insurance when the dealer doesn't have an ace up? Can I do that? And then they explain more and say like, yeah, but how much can I bet $1,000 on insurance, or, whatever. You can ask about side bets, or you could just say like, hey guys, my gal, she wants to go to a nice show. What's your guys' favorite place to go? You do that in between rounds, and you have your money on your chips in the betting circle, and the dealer can't deal the round until you let go of the money. Those are just stupid things that we've done to slow the game down. But to be able to stall is a valuable skill. And one other story I wanted to relate that I heard, I think within the last year. I don't want to say who it is, but it's a professional blackjack player I have an incredible amount of respect for. And they were telling me about, they were doing a more advanced blackjack skill, but there's this time where they needed time to really process what had just happened, to kind of lock it in. And apparently they're playing heads up and said, hold on, and just stood up from the table, middle of the shoe, walked around the casino for like 30 seconds, then sat back down and started playing again. And it was a good example of an absolute professional doing what they needed to do their job right. And I love it. And I think about that all the time when I'm training people or when I'm, working on something myself and saying, at the end of the day, I got to control the game. I guess to quickly, reiterate, the first thing you got to do is get faster. Get faster at every skill, and it'll make a lot of these problems go away. But secondly, you just got to be okay being uncomfortable, stalling the table at times. Hopefully not often. I think speed will take care of most of these problems. All right, so let's move on to the second topic, which is an email I got from one of our members who got intimidated into giving his ID at the cage. And I couldn't find the exact email, but I remember him saying, I know, Colin, you told me not to do it, but in the moment, I'm at the cage, they're demanding my ID, and I kind of panicked and just gave it to them. And I thought it was a good kind of teaching opportunity for anyone listening to just kind of talk through this situation. So, this is assuming you don't want to give ID. If they're asking for ID at the cage, it could just be that there's a dollar amount threshold that they need ID. And I've had this. I've had this twice, I want to say in the last year, where I'm playing unrated because, I haven't legally changed my name or anything. And I assume that I'm in any database they're going to look me up in. But I'm going to cash out and I'm not getting heat, but the dollar amount I'm cashing out, let's say it's $5,000 or whatever, they just say they need my ID. And I just have to make a quick decision and say, do I care? In both of these situations, I said, you know what? I don't care. I'm in whatever database they have, and I want to just get this cash. And so I gave them my ID, and it was absolutely fine. They didn't look me up. They just, I don't even know what they did it for. Maybe just it's their internal policy for an amount over 5,000 or 3,000 or whatever it is. But let's say you don't. There's another time where I was cashing out, I don't know, maybe a year and a half ago, and they asked for my ID, and it was a place where I did not want them looking me up. And I knew why. I knew that they use a certain database, and I knew it was going to lead to more problems than I wanted to deal with at the time. And so I just said, you know what? I don't have it with me. And I hadn't given them the chips yet. Or maybe I'd put them on the counter, but I hadn't slid them to them yet. And they said they need ID. And I said, you know what? I don't have it. I'll be back. And I just took my chips and I left. So I would say, here are your options. The first one, and the one that I would recommend, if at all possible, is just leave with the chips immediately. You can always come back later and have someone else cash them for you. If you can come back on a different shift and cash them when it's not, for whatever reason, if it's a dollar amount, you're probably gonna have the same problem, but you can come back and cash out 2,000 and come back the next day and cash out another 2,000. I helped a friend cash out his chips. I want to say it was 7,000 or 8,000. And I cashed out 2, walked out, came back 30 minutes later, cashed out 2 more from a different cashier. And it wasn't the $10,000 thing. It wasn't structuring or, suspicious activity. I just cashed out 2, came back, and it was absolutely no problem. I've had wife, friends, sister-in-law, various people cash chips out for me. So that can be another option. I've done this for APs. I've had APs do this for me. Your second option is there might be another AP who would actually want the chips from you to play with them. So, we've talked about this at various times, but it's not a bad idea if you show up at a casino and you have a few $1,000s worth of chips to start out with. There are multiple reasons this can be valuable. One is you're not buying in and they're saying, who is this guy? You're just, as far as they know, you were already playing, or you were playing the day before or the week before or whatever. Another reason this can be valuable is if you don't want to buy in over $10,000, if you're able to start a session with $5,000, $7,000, something like that, we're talking about, you're not going to be worrying for $14,000 or $16,000 worth of play between the chips and buying in, because a cash transaction report is when you've bought in $10,000 or cash out $10,000. So there are plenty of APs that would say, hey, I'll buy those chips off of you, and maybe you give them, 1 or 2 or 3% off the top or whatever to take those chips off you, or maybe they'll just do it because they know you're going to return the favor down the road. So that's another option. A third option is to decide if you want to put up a fight. It's not cool or really okay for casinos to just confiscate your chips, but it's something that happens. And I think when we were running the church team, we just kind of assumed that crooked casinos was part of the job. It was dealing with casinos that would do things that kind of went against our rights, and we just went with it. And I've been really inspired by Tommy Highland, Bobner Session, and some other people to say, that's not okay. We just kind of figured that's the way the world works. But I have friends, I can think of a BJA pro. I don't want to say his name, but he told me this story a while back where he was at the cashier's cage and he had, we'll say, $9,600 in chips. And they said, well, we're going to need your ID. He said, no, you don't. And they said, well, then we're going to keep the chips. He said, no, you're not. I'm going to stay here until you give me my money. And I'm not going to give ID because you actually don't need it. And he stayed there. I want to say it was like 45 minutes that he just, I don't know if it was friendly, but he was firm, but not, he wasn't like cussing them out or anything. He wasn't filming it. He just said, no, you don't need my ID. At the end of the day, 45 minutes later, they cash him out, they give him his money, and he relayed the story to me just to say, look, sometimes it works to put up a fight, to stick up for yourself and say, no, I'm following the law, you're not. However, there are those cases where the casino violates your rights, and you have to really, the fourth option is decide if you want to give up ID to get your cash and leave. Again, with the church team, this is this is exactly what we told our players. We said, at the end of the day, get the cash. And so that meant all of our players had to be okay if the casino said, well, we're not cashing you out unless you give ID, that they had to just give ID. And it sucked, but we figured that's, again, that's the way these crooked casinos work. So you can hire a lawyer if a casino won't give you your chips, but I would try to avoid it getting to that point by when you get to the cashier's cage, don't slide the chips over to them. You could stack them in front of you. And if they say, we're going to need ID, you can say, oh, you know what? I don't have it. I'll be back. And you can leave. Again, those are your options. You can just try to leave cash out later or trade them to another AP for cash. You can decide if you want to put up a fight or if you want to say, screw it, I don't really care. I'm in every database already. That was kind of the story I gave. I knew I was in the databases. I didn't really care. If they look me up and say, hey, you're done here, I would rather, okay, great. Get an updated picture of me for your databases. I'm all over the stupid internet, and just get my cash and get out of there. Those are your options. But what I don't want you to do is be intimidated into doing something that's not what you wanted to do. So that was the email from this guy. He's like, I didn't want to give ID, but I felt intimidated. Don't let them intimidate you. You know, if they say we need ID, you could say, no, actually, you don't need ID. I'm leaving. Take your chips with you. Of course, it's a different story if they then confiscate your chips. That's where you got to get, gaming commission involved, or, we've got an entire list of lawyers around the country that you can call to defend you if a casino does something that they shouldn't. It's in our members area under tools. I think under the literature section, we have that list. So that's enough on this topic. Let's move on. The third thing I want to talk about is this story of hidden bankroll. So how this story goes is that one of our members had read a creative way of stashing his bankroll. I want to say it was $9,000. So he stashes this $9,000 in his kitchen in a normal looking receptacle. I don't want to give the details. You can read about it on the forum if you have a membership. But he doesn't tell his girlfriend about this. And apparently without telling him, which is not an odd thing to do, but she decides to kind of go on a cleaning spree and is cleaning out their kitchen and throws out said receptacle with $9,000 in it. So the story ends with a happy ending. He finds the money in the garbage, and all's well that ends well. But I just thought, hey, this is a good opportunity to kind of talk about this. Back in the day, I used to keep my money in the closet, kind of just up where I could reach in the corner of the closet, kind of just loose. I think at first I had this book that had a little hidden compartment, and I used that at first, but it could really only hold maybe $10,000 or $20,000. And so then when I had $40,000 or $50,000 or $60,000, it was kind of just up in the closet. And lots of times I even forgot to lock the front door of our apartment. It is just horrifically stupid. And it is, I feel like, fortuitous that I didn't have my bankroll stolen out of our apartment. There were known robberies that happened. I mean, once I found out that, there were some robberies happening, I always remember to lock the door after that. And I really shouldn't have kept all that bankroll up in the closet. I should have invested the money into something much, much more secure, but I was young and stupid. I remember other people that I played with, they kept their money in the freezer or even like in a vacuum cleaner in kind of where you couldn't see it, just different things that are like, oh, no one's going to look there. But those, in my advice, are all really dumb ideas. And what I would strongly recommend, what became church team policy, what I did, after like year one of playing blackjack, is to get a bolted safe, something you can bolt in your closet or, somewhere inconspicuous, and it can be bolted either into the subfloor or into the, the framing of the walls. And the other option is, I think some people, you can get these bags, I don't know what you call it, like a satchel that is knife-proof, tear-proof, and it actually has a lock built into it, and you can kind of lock it to something so that you could bring your, bankroll with you on a trip and lock it to something that's bolted into the floors or whatever when you're on a trip, something like that. Basically, the idea is something that is not going to accidentally get thrown out or accidentally, or someone could stumble across it, So that's the first thing, is get something like that. The second advice is if it's a significant amount of money, like enough money that you are going to lose sleep or it's going to really affect your ability to continue as an advantage player, I wouldn't keep it all in one place. Let's say you've got 20 grand and this is your bankroll, and if you lose it, you're not playing for the next year. Well, I would keep enough that you need for your, upcoming play, maybe 5 or even 10 grand, somewhere like in a safe, and then keep the other 10 somewhere completely separate, whether it's in your bank account, whether it's in a safe deposit box, which I've heard that it's not legal to keep cash in a safe deposit box. I don't know. That's not my expertise. We used to keep over $100,000 in safe deposit. I think we kept a couple $100,000 in safe deposit boxes at the bank before I heard that it was illegal. And even then, I don't know. I didn't know that rule. I didn't really look into it, but maybe that's an option. Maybe you have a separate safe in your car and you keep some of it there. I don't know. Just don't keep it all in one place if it's really going to affect you if something happened. And our goal with the deal with the safe is that it's somewhat fireproof, somewhat, waterproof, and that if a burglar was in your house for an hour, they're probably not going to be able to get to it. Of course, if they had like multiple days, they could find a way to get it out of there. But you just want to make it not as easy as a normal, kitchen receptacle that could get easily thrown out. My last bit of advice with this is don't let anybody know that you keep money at home. This was church team policy. If someone were to say like, oh, so what do you do with all that cash? You just, keep it at home? That you don't say, yeah, man, I keep it in my, freezer. Our policy was to say, oh, no, of course I wouldn't keep my money at home. That would be too dangerous, even though we did keep our money at home. The reason being, you just don't need the word being out there that you have money accessible in your house. And if you want to say, hey, I thought you guys were the church team, well, we can debate the meaning of not giving false testimony against your neighbor or your brother. That was the policy we came up with. As far as why, well, I've known a few APs that have been stolen. I mean, really, I can only think of a couple stories. Never happened with the church team, but the one that comes to mind is a local AP that I knew back when we were playing, and he was very proud of his success at the tables, and he bragged about it at the casinos. And lo and behold, someone had followed him home and then waited for him to be gone and stole his entire bankroll. And, it just felt like, man, just not smart to talk about it, just not smart for people to know. We as APs, we're not getting a lot of glory for what we do. We don't want the casinos knowing that we have the upper hand. Don't let anybody know. Don't let pride be the downfall of your bankroll. So that's my advice there. I'm glad it all worked out well for our member. And, he's got a great story to tell. But from knowing people who have lost some chunk or all of their bankroll before, I just want you guys to be smart about it. All right, let's move on. Kind of in a similar vein of protecting things, I want to talk about protecting your identity on social media. So where this came from, I just got a private message from one of our members, and he mentioned the latest recent Gambling with an Edge podcast with T. Dane. And I know T. Dane, he worked surveillance for years. He's spoken at boot camps in the past, but he doesn't do that anymore because he's been out of the game for a couple of years. But I listened to it. It's actually a really good podcast. You should listen to the latest Gambling with an Edge. But in it, T. Dane says that they were able to put together the church team, which was the blackjack team that I co-managed and managed for a number of years. They put us together because of MySpace. And so this guy, one of our members, private messages me. He's like, is this true? And maybe you could talk about this. And the first thing I'd say is, I know you're laughing right now, but don't knock us. This was before any other social media. And if you were around in, let's say, 2005, 2004 through 2006, MySpace was pretty sweet back then. You could have your own background music when someone showed up to your MySpace page. You could have your own wallpaper or background image, kind of customize it. And then you had this friends list. You got to choose how many friends you showed and who were your top friends. And I think with the people younger than me, maybe the high schoolers, there was drama over who would be in their friends list. So anyway, it was the Facebook before Facebook. It was before Twitter, before Instagram and Snapchat and TikTok and all those things. There was this thing called MySpace, and we were all on it because it was like the Wild West of social media. And we just were not thinking that casinos would also be on MySpace or surveillance workers. And it was really, really dumb. All they had to do was when they would back off one of our players, let's say they back off Ford Knowlton, who was on the church team, they could look at his friends list and see myself and Ben Crawford and Mark Treese and, all these other people that were known high rollers and be like, oh, okay, all these guys are part of this team. So incredibly dumb. Well, that's my embarrassing story, but let's move on to what you should do. And here's my advice on what you should do about protecting your identity on social media. The first question is, do you even care? Like, do you care about protecting your ID? I know some people, they just don't care. Advantage play is something they're doing for a short period of time, and they feel like, whatever, if I get a couple more backoffs because of some really smart surveillance person that looks me up, then that's fine with me. Now, that's not really the advice I would give most of you, but if you don't care, whatever, just live your best life, I guess. But if you do care, then the first thing you want to do is to set all of your personal accounts to private. If you're on Facebook, set it to private. If you're on Instagram, set it to private, all that stuff. But the second thing is be really cautious about who you accept friend requests from. I don't accept any friend requests from someone that I either don't know, oh, I know who this is, or have, mutual friends so that I say, oh, okay, I haven't hung out with this person a bunch, but he's good friends with 5 other friends of mine. And so, yeah, this is someone I would want to connect with through social media. Like, I don't accept people unless I really know who they are and I know I want to accept a friend request from them or whatever you call it. I don't know, a follower or subscriber or something like that. So yeah, that's the first thing you can do to protect your account. Secondly, if you really want to share about your Advantage Play exploits, create an anonymous account for your AP friends. So if you're on Instagram, create an anonymous account that is separate from your, public profile or whatever. And, kind of going back to the bragging about how much money you're making at the casinos, for your own safety, I wouldn't brag about where you are. Like, hey, I'm at Pachanga crushing them, for $50,000. I wouldn't brag about that stuff, like where you are, how much money you have. Because like I said, I know people that this has led to them getting robbed. And it's just not smart. If you need to brag, do it privately to people you know and trust, or, brag to your mom about it later. But I wouldn't brag on social media because that's just asking for trouble. So there's a little bit of social media advice. I might give more, except I'm just really terrible at social media. I don't really post hardly at all, and I don't. It's just not a big deal to me, so I don't know a whole lot about it. I'm not on TikTok or Snapchat or any of those things. So moving on, I've got one more thing I want to talk about, and I'll try to do another one of these soon. But the last thing I want to talk about today is what I would prioritize if I ran a blackjack team today. And the reason I'm sharing this is I think that there's going to be things, even if you have no intentions of being on a team, I think there's going to be things that you can glean for your own Advantage Play career and your own efforts to really maximize your profits as a card counter or Advantage player. So to talk about what I'd prioritize today, I'll start with 3 things that I think we really had right. And then I'll get into, 4 or 5 things that I would do differently. So the first thing I think we really had right was camaraderie. In my opinion, and I'd be happy to hear from other people that have played on teams, but in my opinion, the teams that I've known that are really just about money tend to burn out. I've known a handful. I've even been on a team where it became not fun and was really just about the money, and that was the beginning of the end. So we actually, on the church team, a lot of us really enjoyed each other. We enjoyed our regular meetings. We would hang out. We'd go see a movie or do a meal or something like that had nothing to do with, an official church team function. And I think that really helped. I think a lot of players really cared for each other outside of blackjack. Well, the reason that matters is because when something's just about money, one of my favorite authors, he talks about having multiple bottom lines. If money is the only bottom line, I just don't think it's a very good motivator for long. At some point you're like, well, the money isn't worth whatever else, like the loneliness or the boredom or the stress or whatever. But when there's another bottom line, like, oh, I've got these friends that are in it with me, it becomes incredibly motivating to keep doing this thing. But secondly, these are the people that when you are feeling discouraged or stressed or a lack of motivation or whatever, those are the people you can reach out to, whether it's on a trip or anything like that. And it's the people that like you can spur them on when they're going on a trip, and maybe them planning a trip is the motivation you need. I enjoy going on trips with other players because at the end of the day, we could like swap a few war stories from the tables. We can, figure out what food we want to enjoy together. We could talk about something that has nothing to do with casinos or blackjack, any number of things. And I would say that let's say you're a solo player, I'd say you still need camaraderie. I think the people that try to be absolute lone wolves, they burn themselves out. It tends to become just about money and tends to become a little bit unhealthy. So that's one thing I think we absolutely had right, is that there was really strong camaraderie. And I'm really glad that we had that. I think that Ben was good at kind of creating a group of people, and I think that we just had the right group of people that were in it. So that's number one. Number two, another thing we had right is that management had a lot of experience. So this is not to toot my own horn, but just to realize that by the time we started the church team, we'd taken well over $500,000 from casinos. I don't know about well over, but at least $500,000 from casinos. And we'd played from $2 tables where we're spreading up to, 2 spots of 25 or 50, all the way up to high limit play, betting up to 2 spots of $2,000 in casinos. We'd flown around the country. We'd been backed off, flyered, won, lost, all sorts of things. We'd done team play, solo play, and the vast majority of the lessons, even that I share in my book, The 21st Century Card Counter, are actually lessons that I learned from my time playing, because that's where we were having all these experiences and trial and error and sharing like, oh, this worked, this didn't work. And some people, they become a new player, a new, card counter advantage player, and they're like, oh, I'm going to start a team. And, you might not have the experience where you can really add value for your players. But between the experiences we had, we also got really good at training and managing people, supporting them, and really adding value to them outside of what they could do on their own. That really set our players up to have more success than if they would have done it on their own. So what does that have to do with you? Well, if you say, oh, I'm going to start a team, you got to make sure that you're able to add some value in some way, Otherwise, if you're like, oh, I want to start a team, well, why? Is it just that you're good at collecting people? That might be good enough. But I think part of our success was that we did have quite a bit of experience, and we knew how to handle the crazy shit that comes your way as a high stakes blackjack player. So I think that was one thing we had. Another thing we had right. And the third thing really is fearlessness. And I don't credit ourselves with this. I credit the teams we were inspired by, the Highlanders. I don't know what they go by. I don't want to rat any teams out, but we'll call them the big team. And or Mossad, or, I don't want to say anything that they wouldn't want me to say. But there's a large team that Ben was involved with briefly before we kind of went off on our own and started playing. But these teams, the Highlanders, MIT team, and the big team, they were fearless. They did not get intimidated by casinos, by backoffs, by being trespassed, by casino intimidation, any of that stuff. They were not afraid of heat. They were not, using large amounts of cover. And that is a huge key to the success we had. Is it wasn't like, hey guys, let's be fearless. It was just assumed. It was like, that's how you do this job. You do this job not by using massive amounts of cover and trying to avoid a backoff. You do this job, you make money at this job by not being afraid of casinos, by putting the big bets out there, as Tommy Highland says, firing those bets out there, when you have the advantage. And if we would have been a timid team, we would not have made much money. So I think that's definitely something we had right. And anyone that is interested in high stakes advantage play, I recommend reading Josh Axelrad's book, Repeat Until Rich. He does as good of a job as anybody that I know at really kind of explaining the ethos they had of don't back yourself off, make the casino back you off. And I just think that a lot of people that want to make money at blackjack need to hear that. So let's move on to things that I'd change. I think the first thing I would say, it's kind of two ideas in one, which is kind of this spirit of excellence combined with quality over quantity. So, we felt like we had pretty high test out standards, and we kind of did, but we also really felt like it would be difficult to say no to someone that wanted to join the team that was willing to put in hours at the casinos, high stakes, blackjack play. It was hard to say no to them when they were getting close but weren't quite testing out. Or they kind of got to a point where they tested out once, but they were struggling to pass their retest. And I think, it was a combination of we were young, we were optimistic, and we hadn't had much failure until we did. I mean, it all worked out in the end. Whenever we had failure, we learned from it and we regrouped and we got better. But, if I were to start a team today, I would have what I call a spirit of excellence, which is rather than creating a culture in the team of, hey guys, you're going to have to reach this point where you can pass this daunting test out and it's going to be really hard and scary. And, you might have to test it again in 6 months. I'd really create a culture of we enjoy being excellent at what we do. It's not this scary, I've got to pass a test out. It's a hell yeah, I'm going to train till not only I pass the test out, but anyone on the team can ask me in any moment to get tested again. And I'm not going to be defensive. I'm going to be like, yeah, I want to prove to you that I can pass a test out. Like, do you think any, elite athlete, LeBron James or, Michael Jordan in his prime, or probably Michael Jordan today, any elite athlete, if you challenge them, they don't get defensive and get scared. They get fired up to prove to you that they're, better than you think they are. And I don't think that's really, I think for a lot of athletes, it's about hubris. I don't think that's really my point. My point is that I would want to work with people that don't just want to reach the point where they can pass a test out, but where they want to prove to themselves and others that they're excellent at what they do day in and day out. There is really this kind of standard or spirit of excellence in what they do because you guys know, hopefully the edge is small, I want to say a third of players on the church team did not make money. They broke even or lost a small amount. And these are people that passed the test out at some point. And again, maybe we lowered the bar for them to pass the test out. Maybe we were like, dang, they've been out, from across the country trying to test out for 4 days. They're running out of time. They haven't passed the test out yet. But I think they're close enough. We'll say that they passed. Like that's not the way I would do things now. And so that goes to the second point of quality over quantity. That I think that we felt like more is always better. More players, more hours. But I would not say that at this point. Quality is more important. Quality of hours, quality of players is more important than quantity of hours or quantity of players. That we basically, let's say a third of the team was dead weight, that they didn't contribute towards closing bankrolls. Maybe they made as much as they cost the team in wages and expenses, but that's not good enough. So I would rather have a leaner, meaner team of people that, have the availability, have the desire to be incredibly excellent at what they do. So what does this mean for you? Well, I would set my goal of not just being able to test out, whether it's through our, test out drill on Blackjack Apprenticeship, or whether it's at a boot camp, or whether it's just having a friend, AP friend test you out. I wouldn't set the goal of saying like, hey, I want to get to this point and, I did it. I'm relieved. I would set that as, okay, that's my first hurdle to becoming a professional blackjack player. My next hurdle is I want to pass it again and again, and to, once I've tested out, to continue to train so that someone could test me out at any point. And I know, like, my friends that are pros, the Joe 748s or SD1s or, Sassy Red or Spartan or Levi Mitch or, Stan Podolak or any of the people that I've interviewed on our podcast that have come through our training. I know these people, they're like, bring it on. Yeah, I'll test out again because I want to be excellent at what I do. Okay. The second thing I would do differently is have less ego as a team manager. So I'll keep this brief, and I don't want to speak for anyone else that was involved in managing the church team, but I can't say for myself at 26 or 27 years old, co-managing $1 million blackjack team, I definitely started to think I was hot stuff and to kind of create, I don't know if I created it, but there felt in hindsight like there was a divide between management and players. Like management, we were the people that you only reach out if you absolutely need to, or, don't tell me that you just won or lost $20,000. I don't care. Players were the ones that went out there and played. And, that was really dumb for a couple reasons. The way I see leadership now is that leaders aren't served by their employees or by the people they lead. Leaders actually serve those people because at the end of the day, we all just have different skills or gifts that we've developed or that we've been given. And really the goal of a healthy organization or team or whatever is to use those skills and gifts to serve each other without ego, So if I had to do over to run a team, my goal, if I'm managing it, is to serve those players. Now, that doesn't mean I'm on call 24/7 because, you just had a crazy shoe where you lost every hand or you won every hand. That's not the point. The point is, how do I not see myself as above them, but as supporting these people, as they're supporting me, as we're encouraging each other, and yeah, we have different roles, but it's not a hierarchy in terms of like who's superior or whatever. I don't know if you would have asked me, I wouldn't have said, oh, I'm superior, but I kind of think that was what was communicated. And I look back at that time and some of the players from the team are still very good friends. Like some of my best friends are people that were on that team, and other people maybe we're not even that close, but I have an incredible amount of respect. And if I could go back in time and see them more as friends and peers, people to learn from, not just to teach, I think I would have actually been better off myself. I think I could have learned a ton from these people that happen to be players rather than management or whatever. All right, I'm going to move on. The next thing I would change has to do with investing. So with the church team, there was no required investment you needed to make. And you got a little bit better cut if you invested, if you were a player on the team than if you weren't a player. But if I had to do over, I would strongly encourage, if not require, any player to invest because it's a different job when you have some skin in the game. And well, there's two reasons. One is it's a different job when you have skin in the game, when it's like some of the money you're winning or losing is yours. But beyond that, it's really good for you as a player to be invested. It's going from getting paid for putting hours in at a casino to getting paid off of everybody's hours, your own hours and other players' hours. And you can really kind of skyrocket your financial growth if you're investing. To me, the perfect team would be a group of people, 3, 4, 5 people that all invest equally and play equally. That's never realistic or possible, or rarely, but I would want to really encourage any of the players to invest in ways that they could, whether that's taking a smaller cut as management or not having outside investors, whatever it is. The way we did it, we really had a bloated bankroll, and it probably just cost, it just meant money going to these outside investors that were like, a player's cousin's friend who invested in the team. We started cutting those people out because the money really should have been going back to the team, the players and management that were putting in the tough hours, making this thing happen. These last two, what do they mean for you? Well, I don't know what your sphere of influence is, but my advice to you is don't see yourself as like better than the people that you lead or have influence over. I learned from my kids. I lead them, but I learned from them. And there are ways that they are better people than me. And as far as investing, if you're thinking about teaming up with other people, even if you're trying to decide whether you want to play with your own money or also take on a friend's money to play with, I would lean towards, your own money. Or if you're teaming up with other people, everybody invests. Everybody has skin in the game. Everybody gets to then enjoy the fruits of your labor for the hard work that you have before you of, taking casinos' money. All right, last thing that I would change is networking. So when we were running the church team, again, I think there was this like, hey, we're 26, 27, 28 years old, running this, $1 million team, taking $500,000 a year from casinos. One year we took over, $1.5 million from casinos. I think we thought we didn't need other people and we were pretty awesome. And that was just dumb, young hubris. My guess is if we would have invested in networking like we could have, now that I've met people through the blackjack ball, now that I know, even just thinking about the people we knew locally that had different strengths to us, I think we could have won twice as much money, if not more. And that's hard to think about. Like, we won $3.5 million. We could have won $7 million. I think if we would have had a higher standard for the team, we could have won $10 million. And it's okay, no regrets. But if I were to start a team now, I would absolutely invest in networking. And that doesn't mean just taking from other people. That means giving. That means saying, hey, how can I benefit these other advantage players? And are there ways that their skills can benefit me? We knew a team of people, I think it was 3 or 4 guys, and they were local, and we would get, beers and wings like once every 6 months. I would with them and just talk shop. But these guys, they were brilliant programmers. They could analyze a side bet or something like that we had no ability to do, while we had, 20 players and $500,000 to $1 million. Like if we would have worked together and found a creative way to, give them a cut for analyzing, finding the game and us get a cut for playing it or funding it, we could have made a ton of money. That's just one example, since winding down or ending the church team days, I've met a lot of people I think we could have helped and benefited from over the years. And so here's my encouragement to you. Yeah, you have to learn how to master card carrying, and you're probably not going to just team up with every other AP out there. But the people I know that are doing the best and having the most success are people that have a strong network. Yeah, they have a support system like the camaraderie thing I was talking about, but also a good network of other people that are out there. I get emails from people or text messages saying, hey, Colin, I found this. I can't play it, but maybe you can. And maybe I can't play it, but I can tell a friend about it, because if I can't take the money out of the casino, I definitely want to help a friend take it. And those people that are sharing info with me, they're the same people that I'm going to say, hey, I heard about this in your area and I don't have the time to fly out there, but maybe you can hit it up. So invest in that. Don't start asking people for information when you're not at a place where you can add value, but you can be networking without just sharing information. You can be meeting people, hanging out. There was an awesome meetup with a group of BJA members in the Midwest recently. And there was a forum thread after the fact, and they just had a great time just hanging out with other APs. And I thought it was super awesome. Now you want to be safe and don't, invite strangers over to your house. But they got to know each other through the forum, and they met up, and, I'm just happy that networking is happening. So those are the things I would do differently if I did a team. I'm going to try to do another podcast soon, one of them on some takeaways from the blackjack ball. And then I'm going to be interviewing Richard Munchkin again, which to me is a huge honor that he would take the time to talk with me. I interviewed him 8 years ago at his house And it was a lot of fun. And he said I can do it again. So those are some podcasts that will be coming up. If you want to learn more about Blackjack Apprenticeship, you can check out the website where we have a membership and we have boot camps and we have an app and we have stuff like that you could check out. And we've got free videos on YouTube and these free podcasts and then members only podcasts and stuff like that. So I don't really care to sell this stuff, just telling you what we've got. So hopefully this is valuable to you. If you have something that you think would be valuable for me to talk about in a podcast in a longer form than one of the videos, let me know. We have a ton of content already on the site, so I might not do it, but I just might. So you can share that with me, Colin at blackjackapprenticeship.com, and I will catch you guys next time.